Suppose you are a teacher who wants to calculate an overall average score based on students' exam results. In the previous video, we learned how to read files. So if the scores are stored in a file, you already know how to read them. But if the calculated result is stored only in a program variable, do you really need to rerun the program every time you want to see it? That's not very elegant. Besides reading files, writing files is also a very common operation. By saving the program's output to a file, you don't need to rerun the program repeatedly, and you can easily share the results with others. Writing files is very similar to reading files. In both cases, you need to open the file and close it after the operation is finished. So we can still use the familiar with open as syntax, with the file path passed as the first argument. For the second argument, we pass in the mode. The write mode is represented by the string W, so we use W in read mode. When the second argument is R, the program will raise an error if the file cannot be found at the given path. In write mode, this problem does not exist. If the file does not exist, the program will automatically create a file with a given name. We can also pass the optional encoding parameter to ensure the file is written using UDF-8 encoding. Only important thing to note is that opening a file in W mode will clear its existing contents if the file already exists. So use W carefully. After thinking it through, we can start writing to the file. The variable name you choose after as refers to the file object returned by the open function. For writing files, the file object provides a write method. For example, after doing this, the file data. txt will contain the line hello. If we call write again and pass in UU, what will the file look like? It will look like this. That's right. Write does not automatically add a new line. So if you want line breaks, you need to include new line characters yourself. You might be wondering, what if I don't want to clear the original content and only want to append new data? In that case, you shouldn't use W mode. Instead, use A, which stands for append rather than overwrite. So if a file already contains 2 lines of text, opening it in a mode and calling write twice will append hello and UU instead of replacing the original content. Just like log a mode will also create the file if it does not exist. Another important point is that in both W and a modes, you cannot read the original contents of the file. If you try to call read on the file object, the program will raise an error because reading is not supported. So what should we do? Should we open the file once in R mode to read and then again in W mode to write? That would be unnecessarily complicated. By adding a plus sign to R, forming R, we can enable both reading and writing. After opening the file this way, calling read and write will both work. After calling write, new content will be appended to the end of the file. Now it's time for practice. This practice consists of 2 small tasks. You can pause and try them yourself first. Now, let's begin. The first task is to write these 3 lines of poetry into a file named SciPoem. txt, when dealing with file operations, first consider which mode to use. Here, we are writing content into a brand new file, so we can use the hide-demode mode. In double mode, even if the file doesn't exist, the program will create it for us. We'll use the familiar with open. Inside the parentheses, first pass the file path. I plan to create it in the same folder as the code file, so the relative path starts with ibendap, followed by the file name. Of course, if it's in the same folder, the Thorvald can actually be omitted. Then, for the mode, pass Thorvald. It's still best to pass the Thorvald encoding parameter as well to ensure UTF-8 encoding. After Thorvald, as our very reasonable variable name. I usually use Thorvald for. Next, we can write these 3 lines of poetry. Here, it's quite flexible. I could call the fiWrite method 3 times, like this. But as it stands, this isn't quite right yet, because according to the requirement, each line should end with a new line. So we need to manually add new line characters. Now, let's run it and see the result. You'll see that SciPoem txt has been automatically created and its format meets our requirements. Besides this approach, another method is to combine all the content into one string. This way, you only need to call foiwrite once. Like this, run it and check, the effect is the same. The second practice is to append 2 more lines to the end of the same file. Here, it's better to use the Foisia mode, because using Huizhe mode would clear the content we previously wrote. So first copy the Fuizhe width open as FOA line, change the mode to Fuizhe moi, and then call the Fuizhe writing method at the end, putting these two lines inside. Don't forget the new line characters. Before running, there's one more thing to do. In the previous content, we need to add an extra new line character. Otherwise, the two sections will stick together. Alright, run it and check the result. Done! Isn't it straightforward and simple? See you in the next video where we'll use fur bar mode to read it.